Welcome to yet another episode of Shut Up and Take My Money, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of SaaS products and the stories behind them. From innovative startups to industry giants, we explore the journey of creation, the strategies for success, and the challenges of sustaining these products in the fast-paced digital landscape. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind the products that make users say, "Shut up and take my money." Thank you so much for joining, Jess. It's just great, like how many people you can connect virtually and how good connections can be formed just over like a Slack community school or whatever. I just love that. Why don't we just like start with an introduction of you and we'll take it from there before jumping into any topics?
Absolutely. And like you said, you found me and connected on Slack. I don't know how our worlds collided, but they did. And we've had so many conversations even prior to this. So thanks again, Priyanka. Quick introduction for me. So my name is Jess. And, I always tell this story that I thought I was a sales and SaaS lifer. Love SaaS. So I think when SaaS Sphere came through my inbox, I'm like, that's a group and a network that I want to be a part of. But I spent 10 years at ADP, as many know, one of the top, I think I'm a little biased, but top SaaS companies. And I led and sold from small business to global, which I think is important because oftentimes when we talk about conversions, benchmarking, revenue leak, all these great things that we're going to discuss, of course, there's some adjustments when you're working in the small business sector versus global, as you and I talked a little bit before. I really thought I would stay at ADP for life, but actually ended up moving to an ad tech company, and I wanted to learn the retail media space. And this was during the time when, the Great Resignation, everyone was exiting organizations, and I just wanted to learn a new skill. And why this is important is, I brought more of a SaaS approach to a company that traditionally didn't have many sales motions. They
Yeah.
had something that was called catch demand. Business just came in. Well, that started to evolve, and they really were thinking of how do we bring in maybe an outsider that has that SaaS experience to implement things like KPIs, pipeline tracking, again, the things that you and I are very familiar with. Um,
Right.
at that at that company, I actually built a RevOps function, which of course we'll chat through. I've always been in sales. I've never been an operationally minded person. But ultimately, building that operations function got us to an exit of over $400 million. So always bringing that SaaS throughout experience. And then what I'm doing today as well on the consulting side.
Yeah, I mean, as much as you can automate and set up processes so that the people that you're working with can work on top of that, that's always amazing. Uh, Given the time of the year, I mean, it has been happening for my clients and I have been doing it myself. And I guess we also discussed in a couple of conversations that we have had that how the like companies spend the last quarter or specifically December to like start planning for the year, setting quarterly goals. So what do you think should be like the focus for January specifically? Should it be like sales goals, projections, forecasting? And I mean, I remember our conversation, right? A couple of people are just benchmarking based on industry standards and not even looking at their numbers. So, how do you think people should go about it? And what is like the priority or the right way to do it?
Yeah, great question. And I think I'm going to answer this two ways. When I was a sales VP, I was just always waiting for somebody to give me a number so I could chop it up with my team. I wasn't looking back, I wasn't as strategic as I could have been. I just always thought finance is going to tell me what I have to do. And from there, I can be a strategic sales leader. I don't have much control. So, what I think companies hopefully can start to do, and I'll talk about what they can do now in January as the year starts, is how can we in tandem closely link the activities of finance and the activities of the historic finish. So this is how I see it happen often, and I'm sure you do as well. Finance says, here is the annual operating budget, RevOps, sales ops, sales, go figure out how it fits. Ideally, though, what we could do even before then is have some type of projected year-to-date finish scenarios, right? So early Q4, and depending on your sales cycle, you might have a couple different scenarios, but at least you're saying, here's our projected finish to then guide the 2025 thinking for budget. And I actually want to talk about that as something that goes wrong here in just a moment. is we want to be mindful of not just using historic projected finish as our only metric. Let's put that in a box for a second and I'll talk about that. So to me, again, ideally they work in tandem. We're having conversations throughout the year of what our projected finish is, what our budget looks like, because I know the number one goal of every organization I speak to is having quota letters in sellers' hands by day one. And I can tell you, there have been only a couple instances at companies that I've worked with in the past that they've actually completed that goal. So I'm kind of working around your answer. I think now it's about, speed. We've hopefully analyzed the data. We have some good scenarios planned. We have risk built in. But ideally, even leading up to January 1, how are we partnering as a team versus just getting a budget handed over from finance?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I experienced with one of my clients as well was like they were doing all of these automations on the marketing sides, and the sales team was taking care of MQLs and SQLs, a couple of them. They used to generate themselves and then taking care of MQLs and the conversion rate. They had all of that data, and they had like the accounting team to give them the data of, okay, what is the customer life cycle, right, like, and how much can you really afford to like get a new customer and all of those things, but they never tied things together to then project how like 2025 is going to look like. So that is the activity that we did kind of in November, December, and we finally have that data. So now it's not just like accounting telling us that, okay, this is the amount that you can spend and go figure it out, which is that it's mostly like, okay, this is the amount that you have, but this is like the acquisition cost that makes sense for us to be profitable and like grow month over month at like X percentage, whatever the company like
Exactly.
wants to achieve. So I think, yeah, that's a good use case to fit in.
And we need
Talking.
those insights too, not to cut you off, but think about the comp plan for the sales team or your spiff budget. We need those insights to drive, okay, is our comp plan the same? Should we adjust it? One recommendation, you and I talked a lot about this, that we need to start making is what are our top 2 or 3 KPIs as an organization? So let's say margin improvement and, net revenue retention. I'm just throwing out 2 numbers.
Mhm.
Then helping finance, RevOps, whomever owns the comp plan, building that into the commission structure. So to your point, okay, you have math on the acquisition cost of a customer, great. You have math on seller conversions, hopefully, which I know we'll talk about. But then we often miss, okay, how do we build in performance metrics in the comp plan so we're getting the best results? So I love that. I think that's another use case of why those two groups really need to be connected.
Yeah, one thing that I remember from a past organization, I guess a couple of years back, the way they went about it was like there were company OKRs, right? And then it was broken down into departmental OKRs. And then, of course, it was aligned with all of these projections and forecasting, etc., which was tied with the like conversion metrics that you have rather than like people blindly. I have seen that happening. I don't know the case with you. I have seen people blindly like going to Google and saying that the industry standard from appointment setting to demo book to conversion is this, and so we expect this. But you really have to see your own numbers to really know, okay, what 2025 will look like. And if it doesn't look like what you want, then you might want to change something. So yeah, I think all of those pieces are missing. But what do you think, like, I think a lot of companies are doing it. A lot of companies are doing it right, but there are missing pieces always. So, what do you think are the top missing pieces in these, like planning, projections, forecasting, and actually rolling out on a departmental level so that they can actually hit targets? Because if I talk of my case, I've seen like a lot of companies planning it well nice, but it never got executed during the entire year, and they do the same thing the next year. So, yeah. Would
Well
love to know
said.
that.
For That's such a great point. And, I want to remove the people element because, as you know, there's always challenges with communication and silos and all of that. But let's just go back to the math. And I think a big mistake I see at most companies is, okay, we take our historic finish. So we're finishing at X. And then based on growth projections, based on industry growth, all these other external metrics, we're going to take our projected finish and we're going to add 10, 15% on it. Now, renewals are critical to any business, and a focus on renewals, that is the health of your organization, that's your ability to cross and upsell. But if you're just looking at renewals and historic growth, you are completely missing the ability to model what net new opportunities can look like. You're missing the ability to say, okay, our ICP profile looks like this. Let's do some math to understand based on conversions, all these other, I love your dog, great moment, fired up. But based on all this math, what are some, hypotheses on net new units? So I think a lot of companies shy away from that because you don't have that historic data, right? You're just looking at what does performance look like in the past and what can we get to today. And I'll give you an example. A company that I worked with, they were working with some of the largest consumer packaged goods companies in the world, right? But what they weren't looking at is modeling, okay, we have this great relationship with this customer, but we're only working with 5 or 6 of their brands. We're not working with 10, 15 of their brands. How do we model that? And that's so important because, to me, if you look at a comp plan and you're a renewal seller, great, there's a renewal metric in there. But if you're also tasked on driving net new and renewals, I always tell companies, your sellers, and I was one of them, they're going to focus on the client business, the renewal business. So, I'm not saying you have to segment, maybe a hunter versus farmer, but at least model some what if scenarios for your net new business in conjunction with looking at your renewals business. And then last quick thing here, I'm giving you 2 answers. Conversions by seller. I think I've said that about 18 times on this call. Even if you have 5, 6 sellers, your seller's path to closing looks different, right? Maybe one seller needs a ton of outreach. Maybe one seller doesn't need as much outreach. They convert to meetings really well, but they're getting stuck at proposals. So, that's going to help determine not only the renewals aspect, again, that is critical, but what is possible for net new opportunities that are really going to help you get to your growth. It's renewals are one piece, but net new targets are critical.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that. This is something that I recently came up with and completely off the topic here. But I've seen like organizations working in two ways, in two structures from a sales team perspective. One is like, as you said, handling the complete cycle from outreach to executing the demo proposal and so on, and then passing it to customer success. But these days, I'm also looking at a couple of SaaS companies specifically doing it this way, that there are appointment setters, and then there are demo executors, then proposals, and so on and so forth. So what do you think is like the right way to do it, or specifically for SaaS here, and why do you think
I don't
that
think we have
way?
enough time to answer that question. But, again, I put myself back in my sales leader days and I want to set my sellers up for success. So if somebody just loved going out there, kind of pounding the phones, doing outreach, email campaigns, but then when they get in front of a customer, they're not as comfortable. Like let's align those skills and talents. So this is actually one thing we do today is we go in and we do a talent assessment with the sales team and we understand, okay, who maybe from a talent perspective, is it, a nurture opportunity? Are they maybe a little bit more aggressive when it comes to closing? So there is an element of let's just understand the people. But again, let's go back to their actual conversions because some people could say, Jess, I love to demo, I can propose all day. But then we kind of audit with the math. We say, oh, okay, that person, actually, that's not their best skill. So it depends on the size of the organization and where your customer journey sits. But I've always been a huge fan of let's at least segment by expansion versus renewal revenue and set those sellers and their specific skills up within your organization. So probably not as a specific answer that we need, but you can look at things like call recordings or, seat writing and understanding a little bit more about how that seller interacts with customers at all stages of the journey.
Yeah, one thing that I personally feel, I mean, while I like being specific with the skill set, if someone is good at something, I mean, why not optimize on top of it? But the other way I personally feel, and I don't have data to back it up right now because I've not tried like both at the same time, is like when you start your conversation with someone, let's say you and I started talking, and then someone else takes over before it's actually nurtured toward a certain extent. I mean, there is a chance that you'll lose the lead, is my understanding, because like you're trying to make a connection, and from the connection you try to establish, okay, what you do, what the other person is doing, whether there's a connect. I mean, gone are the days that hard selling used to work. Right now, it's basically like about connection firstly, and then really figuring out whether the two fit together from a connection perspective and whatever they are selling, be it be service or product. So I just think that there is a miss in that way of doing things, that structure, set appointment setters and like different roles, but yeah, can be completely different for someone else.
Yeah, we used to call it, the account quarterback, right?
Mhm.
The quarterback is in charge of the account and everything that happens because you're right. There used to be a joke, you're bringing the entire bus to the sales call. Think about that. You're a prospect and then you're sitting across from 5 or 6 sellers from the other company. That doesn't work. But I think though, when a customer becomes a client, and being able to renew and have customer success, to your point, or an account manager on the client side is so critical in the way they're comped and the way everything looks. Because what you don't want to happen is, okay, you're a client now, we're on to the next opportunity. So I love that. There should always be that one person, that one point of contact, the face of the organization, but there's obviously still support as needed. But absolutely. And I've been sold to in the past, and I don't want 6 or 7 people on a call. And actually, we haven't really talked about revenue leak yet, but that's an opportunity, or that's an issue with revenue leak, poor handoff processes. We had an instance where an SDR was qualifying, getting really great opportunities to the account exec, but the account exec was so used to getting opportunities inbound elsewhere that they actually put these as lower scored leads. So to your point, the handoff process is a huge issue when it comes to revenue leak.
Yeah, now that you talk of revenue leak, where do you think this normally happens? I mean, yeah, what are the scenarios, the topmost that you have encountered, so that like someone who is watching it can actually leverage some of those?
I don't know how much time we have, but it's a
Yes, I guess.
man. So I'll start with the stat because you and I, we love numbers, and I think that's just so important to ground us. So Clari, obviously great forecasting tool, came out with a really lengthy but really informative report this year on revenue leak and some other elements that they're seeing. I tell you this just to quantify it, that
Mhm,
CROs are saying that, hey, 16% of our loss of revenue is just due to leak. So, leak can mean a few different things, and I'll define it really quickly. It's basically any missed opportunity to cross sell, upsell. You may aren't maximizing value in terms of discounting. So, I see negotiation as a really tough one. We're giving away value. Deals aren't starting. So again, that's that leaky bucket. And you know me, I put everything into people,
mhm,
process, and pipeline. Everything we do can really fit into those buckets. So a few people examples. That's the toughest bucket. And I mentioned it earlier. I love Gong, the call recording software. I was on their customer advisory board for a little bit. So shout out to Gong. But unless you're seat writing or on every single call, every single meeting, you have no idea the uncaptured value being given away from your sales team.
mhm,
Another big area I see is if there's turnover on the account, the territory handoff is botched. So then it's really hard that next year, as you're planning, if you've had all this turnover, to really build in a cross sell, upsell percentage because it was such a poor client experience. And actually, an issue I see too is having the right seller in the right role. Again, an expansion based sales motion is different than a renewal based sales motion. So that's the people side, just getting your people in place. The next is process. And again, I could spend an hour here as well. There are some unknowns, but typically we can spot the gap. Is it a deal desk issue? McKinsey had this great study about seller productivity, and actually, sellers are spending, I think only 33% or something of their time in front of customers, meaning what's the 70%? And the 70% looks like, lead qualification, sorting lists for the day. I always made the joke, if you're a company that starts with the letter A, there's some salespeople out there just going to their CRM and doing an alphabetical outreach, which probably makes you and I cringe a little bit.
yeah.
So lead qualification, sorting lists, managing leads, managing opportunities, nurturing leads. There's so many great tools right now around cadences, and automating those cadences. So, from a process perspective, it's what are our sellers doing that's hurting their ability to spend more time in front of customers or doing customer facing tasks.
Yeah.
And then last is, of course, the pipeline. I'm working with a company right now that, we're looking to solve data anomalies. What are anomalies in your data set? We can immediately say this is a leak signal. And one is dirty pipeline. Dirty pipeline. I want to say it twice because I don't know if I coined the term. I definitely did it myself, but it's something that grabs the attention when you say it. And dirty pipeline is days and stage that's below our benchmark. To your point, not the industry benchmark, our benchmark. Missing fields. Maybe we have a next steps field that needs to be filled in every single call and it's missing. That's a sign of potential revenue leak. So that's a really big one in terms of just anomalies in your data set, and then the dirty pipeline. And then finally, here you can tell I'm getting out of breath because I love speaking on this. Sometimes your sales team just can't understand your high probability targets. So we might be getting all these signals from the data that this is a high probability client. Make sure we reach out, we nurture. To your point, we build the relationship. Maybe we send a handwritten card. I don't know. But for some reason, we're either not getting those signals to the sales team that, hey, this is high probability. So again, there are conversions, there are signals, there's the dirty pipeline. There's so many areas in that pipeline that's showing you that there is potential for a leak. And by the way, it's one thing to identify the leak, but how are we going to stop it and then focus on driving new pipeline? Because a seller might say, hey, I've got this one big deal in my pipe. I feel good. Then when that doesn't close, what do we have behind it? So it's not just spotting it. And I'll pause here because I'm rambling a bit for your audience. It's not just spotting it, but then it's how do we actually solve it?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I also did, it's not like directly from a sales perspective. I mean, not from a pipeline perspective, but it was like hurting our retention for sure. So I was handling product and marketing at Porter Metrics at a point. So at that point, I mean, the customer success team used to come up and tell us that, okay, this is happening, that is happening, we don't know, and the product is not ready and things like that. But when I actually started, I mean, I started shadowing calls, customer success and sales both, and there were a couple of things that all these clients were looking for, and it was a pattern, and which was very easy for us to pull off in a matter of a day or two max, which we did, and that actually helped us with the retention aspect of things. And then we made it a quarterly activity where I used to like spend a week or two doing that. But that I feel is function of a customer success team to not only tell us what's happening on ground, and there are processes that I did set up, but it never came to us until unless I actually like either shadow calls or hear recordings. But I'm actually taking off product and marketing, so how do I actually do everything there, given like it's a startup and you're just like trying to scale and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a potential revenue leak as well that people can look into.
Yeah,
I think
that's a
it's
good
great
point. It's so
wisdom.
tough when you're a startup to prioritize. You might be a CRO that's also selling and doing business development. But I love what you said. It's if you don't take the moment to dig in, get your hands dirty in the soil, figure out why, you're going to be sitting there frustrated, not achieving goals. So even to your, I've never actually heard. So kudos to you, somebody that in a non-sales role saying, "Hey, can I proactively speak to customers and learn more?" It's
Oh
challenging.
yeah, I have done that like quite actively. I have always made it a point. I mean, it was an organizational thing as well. Thanks to the founders, they have like set up that processes in place where all the employees have to like regularly go to LinkedIn post and engage, and so that they're actively like engaging with what's happening in the industry and know what we need to build next and why, because they're hearing all of those great stories and the pain points and so on and so forth. So that's one. And the second thing that was like a mandatory thing for all the team members was like everyone needs to talk to a customer or two in a week. For
Right.
me, it was like higher, but for even for the development team, I made it a point that you have to talk to a customer or two in a week, which actually makes you understand what's happening on ground, specifically from a product perspective. Because I have worked with a team of 12 developers. It was my first time as a product manager. At that point, it was just like telling tasks, hitting sprint goals. But when people were actually using the product, there was like loopholes and so on. But when they started taking these calls and even like communicating with the customers, they actually had that empathy with respect to what their pain points were. So I think it surely does help. Okay, I'll not keep you here for too long. As we like move towards the end, anything that you suggest, like a book, a newsletter that you regularly consume, something that you like love doing on a day-to-day or weekly basis that can help with all of this, or something else altogether?
Um, well, it's funny. This is so random, but I'm a cat lady. I know you have your dog. So my
Yes.
husband bought me from Etsy like a way to crochet. I haven't opened it yet. So that was his
Oh,
big gift is I guess I can crochet a cat. So I guess that's sort of fun.
oh,
I need to be more fun because as I think about this, it's only business things coming to mind. One book that I reread that I love is Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss, he was an FBI hostage negotiator, but he talks about negotiating in sales, negotiating in life, because at the end of the day, one area of revenue leak, and we talked about it earlier, is the negotiation aspect. And I actually love what you said. It's no longer just this, aggressive spray and pray outbound. It truly is the customer at the center, but we still have to understand the limitations when it comes to negotiation and being really strong that we have something valuable to give to that customer, right? Because if you believe in what you sell, in the value, and you know how to negotiate, that just builds, I think, this perfect relationship when it comes to quota growth and growth as a seller and growth as an organization. So I probably need to do things that aren't as business focused, like, knit my cat thing.
yeah.
But yeah, Never Split the Difference is a great, great negotiation book. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I have made a note of that. I'll also like check it out. Okay,
Never,
anything that you want to say before we end the call? And I mean, yeah.
no, I want to thank you because, I think we have the tendency to get not stuck in our own networks, but I'm here in Cincinnati and there are just people I know and I go to lunch with and all the things. So I think just your style of saying, "Hey, I want to grow the SaaS network in SaaS sphere and just meet new people." So thank you. And I've learned so much and stay tuned. I feel like you and I have some things coming.
Oh, for sure. We'll stay in touch. We have Slack, everything all together. We'll just stay in touch.
Exactly. And you didn't mention the Pokemon from your brother, more
Oh
importantly.
yeah, that's yeah. It was the first gift. I'll tell you the story. Maybe it's worth as we ended. It's like light-hearted, good content, I guess. So he was on his first trip. I told him I need something. I was a child at that point. I was like, okay, I need a gift and something like that. So he got me this and a pencil which was foldable. And then I was like, okay, what do I really do with it? I mean, it doesn't really belong to the place you went to. So I wanted something like that. But yeah, I think it's sweet.
What'd you get him?
Oh, I was at home, nothing. I just do things from home.
So he gets nothing,
No,
basically.
he does get a lot of gifts. I'm like the person doing more of that. I enjoy gifting in general. So, yeah, he does get that. It's just like I was in school and not going out so much. I am introverted, like big time.
There you go. Well, thank you again. This was really a great conversation, and I always love catching up with you.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Bye.
That's all for this episode of Shut Up and Take My Money. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of SaaS with us. Be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations with industry experts and innovators. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, remember, the journey of creating and sustaining great product is never ending. Keep innovating, keep striving, and keep following. Shut up and take my money.